You can't just be like, hey, here's our dope game, please like show it. You have to be like, also here's your exclusive take and new content.
Yeah, before anybody's even touched the game, they're like, do you have any updates coming? You got some new content? Like, oh my God, just give me a minute.
Butterscotch.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 502 of Coffee with Butterscotch, the game dev comedy podcast of Butterscotch Shenanigans. I'm Seth and I'm the games programmer.
I'm Adam, the miscellaneous programmer.
I'm Sam and I'm the artiste.
And this is a show where we talk about life, business, and working in the games industry. Today's January 10th, 2020 vibe.
Oh, yes.
Before we get started, we have a warning. There's going to be profanity in this show. And we'd also like to thank our recurring supporters over at moneygrab.bscotch.net. Thank you so much for your monthly donations to help keep the podcast juices juicy. We got an announcement today. We're just going to get right into it.
Let's go.
We got the friggin' launch date for Crashlands 2.
It's here.
We know when it's coming out. It's coming out Thursday, April 10th. It is a simultaneous global launch on Steam, the App Store, and Google Play. So whatever you got in your pocket, you're good to go. Mm-hmm. We've also got
no subscription
cross-platform
services, none of that stuff. It's just straight up. You can buy it on those three platforms.
Just gonna buy it, and then you have it. It's yours now. Good job. Mm-hmm. There's going to be cross-platform syncing. Same as the original. Well, I guess we're doing it differently than the original, which we'll talk about a little bit. It's pretty cool. But it does work in the sense that, you just play it on one device and then just pop onto the other device and just keep playing.
Yep. It already works great. We've been doing it in QA this whole time, and I've been doing playthroughs, and I've been bouncing around between my Steam Deck and my PC and my Android phone. And
oh yeah, we do have Steam Deck compatibility as well.
Steam Deck compatibility.
So all good stuff. It's coming together. It's like everything's snapping into place all at once. It's very cool. And if you want to kind of see some new stuff that we haven't really revealed before, we got a new trailer, which has the launch information on it, as well as kind of a sneak peek at quite a few locations, characters, little story moments, creatures. All kinds of wild crap in that trailer.
And you'll see Grandmammy. So if you played the original and you remember one of the fan favorites,
glow up.
Yep, she's got a new appearance. I mean, everything's got a new appearance in Crashlands 2, but it's very apparent when you look at Grandmammy, and it's even more apparent when you see the Brubus, because they also make a little appearance in the
Brubus. Yeah, Brubus are my favorite. My favorite thing from the OG. That's kind of like gotten a big upgrade. Yep. They're so good. Really good. I don't know how much the trailer captures, like how much time you get to see what they're brief moment how they are, but everything is just. I'm so excited because we were going back and looking at the Steam page and stuff and like all the things on it. And it's been like just the same stuff on there for years. Mm-hmm. The stuff from the very early game, even stuff like the early lighting system and like just some of the earlier visuals, they've changed a bit, and just all this new stuff we now get to finally put out there. Oh my God, I'm so psyched. Mm-hmm. So yeah, definitely head over to Steam and wishlist it if you haven't yet, and you'll get that email on April 10th when it comes out. If you're on Android, you can go and pre-register because we'll have the store page up with all the information on there. So that'll be on Google Play. And then on the App Store, you can pre-order. I don't think they have wish lists or whatever, but you can just pre-order it. And then on the day it comes out, it'll just charge your card and it'll be on your phone, just like on the day. And all that stuff helps, send a message to the stores like, hey, you should feature this game because a lot of people are interested in it, kind of a thing. So that definitely helps us quite a bit. Yeah, so if you want like a bigger community, you want like a bigger community of people psyched about the game, to talk about whatever, then like if you do your part,
go click some buttons.
Then you'll have that. So yeah, we're pretty freaking stoked. I know we were originally aiming at 2023, I think was our initial.
I don't think we
we never announced that, but like that was the initial. We were like, we think we could do it. It's been a long journey. We were really gunning for end of 2024.
Yeah.
But as it was kind of approaching, we were just like, there's just so much.
Yep.
There's so much in this game. And like the volume of content is like double original Crashlands.
It's just staggering. There's just so much. But also because because of how it all interplays with each other, then also the sort of combinatorial complexity of it is just far. It's just far. I don't know, so like I mentioned, we've been doing some playthroughs, trying to make sure we get some feedback before we go into the beta, which we'll also talk about. But yeah, so I played for, I don't know, 24 hours, I think, or something like that, and got halfway through the second part of the game. And I wasn't taking my time because I'm trying to get through the whole game to give feedback on it, So like, I'm working fast and it's still 24 hours in, and I just couldn't believe how much stuff there was. And also we talked a lot in this podcast about our goal with Crashlands 2 versus Crashlands 1 and how it was meant to like open up more and more and more as you played rather than kind of expose
rather than
hook.
You're like, oh, okay, I see how this is, and then it kind of
it just really succeeded at that in a way where like I was kind of surprised because like as I was finishing the first act and everything kind of started to get a little bit tied up because I was like still playing as a completionist, like wrapping up everything. And I was like, okay, like at that point I was like, I get the game. I feel like I'm good at it. I get what's going on. And it kind of felt like it was winding down. And then you get the boss fight that then brings you to the next act, And the moment I arrived at the next act, stuff started to get weird. And I was like, what? Yep. And then it kept getting weirder for like the whole next like 12 hours of gameplay as I was starting to work through. So it's working. It's very cool. I'm extremely excited to let people actually play this. And now that we have a date and the trailer showing stuff, I feel a lot better too, because now I feel like people get to see a little bit about what we've been doing and we get to talk about it a little more freely because there's just kind of fewer secrets. You don't have to worry about people being like, oh, does that mean it's going to come out? Whatever. Cause like, no, you know what it's coming out now.
Man, it's been like, it's been 4 years working on this freaking thing. It's like getting an entire college degree and you don't get to tell anybody about like any of the classes that you're taking, like we just had to keep our lips zipped this whole fucking time. It's been so hard.
Yeah, I think what's been most exciting for me is that the kind of two major questions. The major questions I had were just related to how the game works in the long form, right? Because we had done our alpha test back in October of last year. So, and I've already been
which was just that first like zone,
yeah, and
first act.
The thing is, like, we knew after that the game worked, right? But the thing is, most games work depending on their scale for a bit. So the question is always, can you get that? Can you keep on going with it, right? Can you hit Act 2, Act 3, and keep that interest, keep the momentum going? And that's one of the things.
Well, it's so hard to play it as a developer at those points and evaluate whether it's working. Because if you're in the middle of Act 2 and you've got 20 hours of gameplay behind you, that feels very different when you're like what you're going to do next, and like all the stuff you have in your mind of like the story and like what you're trying to achieve. Versus as a developer, just using a dev tool and like hacking your way in and just dropping yourself in the middle of the game and being like, is this fun? Like, it's so hard.
Yeah. That was the idea with the playthroughs we're doing is our two full-time QA are both doing full non-dev playthroughs. I'm doing a full non-dev playthrough. I think you guys both did.
I haven't done mine yet.
You haven't done yours yet?
Mine happens a little later because there's a lot more still.
Yeah. I'm halfway through the game on my playthrough. And again, like Adam was saying, on these internal playthroughs, it's a huge game.
Yeah.
And so I actually can't play it the way that I want to play it because I love like base building and just like vibing. And
you got time for that.
Problem is like I'm trying to play it like a completionist because like I need to check everything. I want to see everything, do all the quests,
check every box,
and craft everything, and like try all the different gadgets and weapons and stuff like that.
I know both our full-time QA, Jordan and Carl, kind of finished their playthroughs up to the final area. And we're currently finishing that like final kind of boss encounter thing, right? So they can't actually like fully complete the game yet, but they're essentially at the doorstep of it. And I think in both of their cases, and again, these people, like Carl has like 6,000 hours in the game already, right? At least from what I know about.
Constantly testing it. Yeah.
Testing it for like 3 years. So like they both took more than 60 hours to do the stuff. So
and they still haven't seen everything.
yeah, so
There's still some quests and some things that they missed, some places they haven't explored.
Yeah, so like it's around there. But that's for people who have played the shit out of it and already know it a bunch. So that's why I don't know. Yeah, I don't know exactly kind of what the total scale of thing's going to be for a new player. We can't know basically until we do something like a beta. But I think what's been most exciting for me is as the final notes have come in from these playthroughs is that, starting off in the project, the whole idea of like unique content, authored content at scale was like the subline of the whole thing for us on the tool side.
It's been our studio motto for 4 years.
Yeah. Can you make something where every time you come across a new thing, there's like enough uniqueness in it that it is just interesting. It is worthwhile inherently, right? As opposed to just being a power creep thing. And after talking to Jordan and Carl yesterday, who just finished their playthroughs, I'm really excited because my main concern was just whether or not you'd be able to sustain that kind of novelty and interest through all 3 acts. And it feels like from their feedback that we've managed to do it. And that was my last thing. Because you can't know that until you have someone play through the whole fucking thing all at once. And we're just at the end. So like we couldn't even test that theory really until essentially now. And it seems like it's working. So I'm really excited. That to me means that like, regardless of what happens come launch and stuff, it means that we did what we were trying to do. Right. Which is very exciting to me.
Well, and the fact that like, I just played for 24 hours, still as a dev, generating lots of feedback and bouncing back and forth between the game and writing thoughts and stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And even still, the end result of that is I'm really excited about when the game goes live and getting to play it just as a player. So like, I just finished playing for 24 hours and I'm pumped about replaying it, but with no like you have to constraints.
So I want to replay it. I want to replay it as a player because it's so different. Just being like, I'm just gonna vibe. Like I've got no demands for this playthrough. Like I just want to do what I want to do. Yeah,
and similarly, I would do so much more base building and farming, and like the experience would just be kind of a different shape in a lot of ways than to what I'm doing right now.
If you're not constantly feeling like I got to get to the next thing, I got to get to the next thing. So it's been what a relief. I will say these last 3 months coming up to launch. For me personally, like I love this period because it's like it's this like triage mode where it's like just most important thing. It feels like a game jam almost, but like because like there's so many things we just like fuck it, like we just there's no time. There's no time. We can't do it. Don't worry about it because there's always a billion things. Like I was joking with Sampy, my wife, earlier, and I was like, I mean, we could work on this for like 5 more years.
Like we could always make up new things to do.
Yeah, because there's always more stories to tell. There's always bugs to fix and optimizations to find. And, there's a billion little things. I will say, though, I was pretty psyched that I think out of all the play time, I think we had 1 crash.
Yeah. No, the bug rate is phenomenal, actually.
One crash, and it was something that was obvious to fix. And so it wasn't like, oh God, what is this? Right. Like I knew exactly where it was. And got that fixed.
I think that was my crash where it was just that one of the unlocks for like unlocking new recipes and stuff,
had so much
stuff in it that the UI was like,
the UI broke. There's so much stuff in it. It's coming along. And so coming up sort of over the next few months, we're going to be doing a lot of this triage, kind of in a weird way. Like normally in the past, like all the art would be done in the game months before launch. Yeah, like 6 months before launch, and then Sam would pivot over to PR and marketing. Because of the changes that we've made in our studio structure, things have flipped a lot. Where Adam is doing the PR and marketing, and Sam is working on art. Like right up to the minute.
Very aggressive.
Launch. Yeah. So as we were playing through, like halfway through the second act, a lot of the items just stop having sprites.
Yeah, or they just have sprites of like their old versions or
sort of like
stand-ins of some sort.
Yeah. There's 100 and there were like around like 100 items that needed art starting like midway through the game. And again, like, you know, we have our artist Anne who's been cranking out stuff. So like she'd already done a bunch of pieces in there. So there's not even just 100 pieces, right? It's like those are
there's 100 remaining.
There's 100 remaining.
There's thousands of things already in there. It's just you know.
So I've been just cranking through those because also it's weird because again it's been so long and the list that I've had has always just felt unending, and then suddenly like as of today I have 27 drawings to do.
Well, and how many did you do this week? Because you started this week,
I did
right? With
60 something this week.
Yeah, and so this is doing it all in a batch where you're basically like designing and rendering them out in black and white.
Yep.
All in one go, and then it'll be the finishing, which is it's like a coloring book at that point, right? Just like paint them in. But it's going to be so wild because for so long we've had so many things in the game that have just been like reusing sprites, like, you know, a weapon, like a higher level weapon. Like we'll use the same sprite as a lower level.
Yeah, for example,
like
I've been using daggers the whole time, and in the last like 6 hours of my playthrough, every dagger upgrade just looked the same. It was the same dagger each time.
Yeah, and I gotta say it's very weird how big of a deal that is in terms of like when you're in a crafting game, right? Like when you're combining materials and then you get an item out of it that looks like it came from those materials. Like that does so much to like reinforce the feel of the game and stuff like that. When really, of course, behind the scenes, we kind of talked about how like a long time ago in the first Crashlands game, we realized that a crafting system is really just a complicated. It's a complicated vendor.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, a vendor is like, I've got 5 gold and I want to buy this dagger. So you exchange the gold for the dagger, right? And crafting is the same. It's usually like, I got 3 pieces of wood, a pebble, and a lung.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're just
I'm going to exchange that for a dagger.
Right? So.
You know? Yeah, they're just currencies, right? Yeah. And so like at the end of the day, mechanically, it really is. You're just like, you know, go out, collect stuff, and exchange it for an item. And it's the visuals that actually make it feel like you've crafted it, right, and not just like lost some materials and gained an item. And so that I'm super stoked to like suddenly have all these like items just plugged right in, and kind of hilariously, like the reason that we're down to this point in dev and we still don't have those sprites is because they are known. Like we know what they need to do, and they're much more simple. And so Sam's time instead was going into stuff like creature animations, which take forever.
Yeah, and there's no downstream work that generates from it. That's basically what it comes down to.
Yeah, so, they just plug right in.
Yeah, versus like creature animations where that can change the feel of it,
sound effects,
balance, and sound effects, and all this stuff.
Yeah, so it's like you basically end up with this big pile of stuff where, and this is a discussion we've had a lot internally, trying to figure out how to triage stuff, which is always
just order of operations.
Yeah, of course it would be nice to have all of the art already, right? But you can't. So what do you actually need to make the next decision about the other big things that are outstanding, right? And so we've had that's like been a recurring thing is figuring out where that seam is, things you can just ignore and things that you cannot. So originally, like, you know, back in October, none of the creatures from the second biome forward had any animations. They were just bouncing around.
They were just pictures bouncing around.
And, you know, so it's like, okay, yeah, you can wait on those for actually quite a while. You could still get, but all of them had components that had art. Right. So it's like, oh, but you want to be able to tell the difference when you pick up stuff. Right. So there's basically figuring out where those little cuts were to
but then we couldn't do this new trailer until those things were animated, because otherwise we couldn't show off the breadth of the cool stuff in the game. Because the moment you saw an unanimated creature, you'd be like, the fuck, you know, like,
which meant that actually Sam's art was dictated by the trailer. Right, where it's like, all right, well, nobody's going to notice if you're wielding like the same visual of a lower level dagger. All people are going to care about is if we show like a variety of weapons, which we do have. Right. It's just we don't have those later ones visually rendered out. And so, so like lots of different things dictate the order in which the art happens.
And I think that core heuristic is the one, right? Which is the order in which you do stuff is the stuff that has the most impact on other stuff and creates the most change downstream demands. Do you have to, because anything else is basically a waste, right? And that's constrained by other external factors, right? So like marketing is the biggest one. But in another world, it would also be constrained by if you got publisher requirements or that kind of stuff. So trying to balance, and I think that's what, and we talk about that a lot in the podcast too. That balance between what do we strictly need to do to get the game done, and then given that we can't just work on the game because we have to also sell it, and we have to pay our team to make it, then where do we sort of stray from that path, and how do we manage that so that we basically in the end can still get the game done?
Yeah.
Yep. So it's I gotta say this past week, and especially I think it's been rough because this past week I've been snowed in. Crazy winter storm here. And for some reason, St. Louis was like, hear me out. What if we don't do anything with the roads? What if we just kind of leave them fucked up?
They didn't salt them? That crazy?
They threw a handful of salt on top of an inch of ice, which does not. They plowed the snow off of the ice, exposed the ice, kind of sprinkled a grain of salt onto it, and carried on with their day. And so
it's poorly funded government nonsense.
Yeah.
So
now, if you throw a bit of salt on top of the ice, what happens is the very surface level of the ice melts, which makes it more slippery.
Because now it's wet.
Then
on top
it
of ice.
then it refreezes in a much more slippery format. Like you got to melt it completely or not at all.
Because then you put you put like a mirror finish on the top.
Yeah. So they like enslickened the fucking roads. So I've been just stuck at home. Can't even go to the gym, even though it's a 2-minute drive because I can't get there.
Yeah, there's a bit where I am because you're also you're like in a weird unincorporated township or whatever the fuck that's like in
they
between.
don't give a fuck about us over here.
So you're in the worst spot possible. But I'm like basically just south of downtown St. Louis, right? Like I'm just right there, and there's
people there. They're plowing.
But
stuff.
even still, like my neighborhood. Was pretty fucked still. Like somebody went through with a plow is a thing that did happen at some point.
That happened here too.
But there was still like I was just like leaving to go get groceries yesterday, and it was just like I was driving on top of like 3 inches of compact snow, and it was like just manageable enough that I was like, okay, I can like make this happen. And as soon as I got to main roads, it was like basically clear, or at least like a lane was clear the whole time,
So are you going a little stir crazy then, Seth? Is that what you're getting at?
Well, what I'm getting at is I've just been on the grind. I've just been working.
You got nothing to do but Crashlands 2 stuff
for like 12 hours a day this week, and it's been wild because I've been just like every little bug that comes up, I'm like, yeah, I'll fix it. I got time. I'm just going. I've been doing all kinds of optimizations. It's been
singular focus.
Yeah, it's been actually kind of fun. Because it does kind of have that game jam feel where it's like just all of my attention is on the game. And it honestly might end up being like that even after the snow clears, just because so many things to do.
Close to the end, too. It's like
so close, and it's just so rewarding, you know?
We should talk about what's coming, like how the rest of this unfolds, right? So
yeah.
Today we're announcing the release date, which is April 10, and that is 8 weeks away, something like that. Is that right?
It's 3 months from now, which is just probably 12 weeks.
True. Yeah, something like 12 weeks away.
Something like 12 weeks.
Something like. And we picked that date for a variety of reasons. The primary one when we were finally picking the date was making sure we have enough room to actually finish the thing. And then it was trying to find a date.
And get it translated.
Finish the thing means translated, do full playthroughs for the whole team, do a beta test, do all, and then have all that done in time to then also have keys we can send out to press early so that they can do their playthroughs and do reviews. So like there's a sequence of things that have to happen in these big gaps in time to get there. And so we needed a date that would give us enough room to get everything done with that window.
Yeah, exactly.
Before launch.
So
let's talk about
what's remaining. Yeah, we're basically pounding out the like I said, that kind of finale situation. And those always take a bit of extra finesse because it's just gotta land one way or another. So we'll be largely working on that, basically, building out the world, building out the quest to finish that out. I'm finishing up these items, and then I'll be flipping over to animate the remaining boss stuff that hasn't been animated yet. And then beyond that, Jen's finishing up the writing she's kind of coming up right behind Seth, finishing up a bunch of the quest work and dialogue and stuff on characters to make sure all that stuff hits. Once all that's wrapped, which basically the goal's roughly like end of Jan, early Feb, then we kick stuff out to localization. We do the beta and then make any tweaks and feedback or like updates from there. I will say that what's one of the really nice things that's happened because of having the game changer, because of all those tools work we've done, is that the speed with which we can implement those tweaks and things like that coming from betas. And again, because of the way we built it, where we tried to answer these really big questions early and make sure that the whole thing was like working, right? You don't run into any big structural problems because of the shape of the thing at this point.
Yeah, like 2 months before launch, you don't somebody be like, yeah, this entire game system that sort of is the foundation of everything.
It's just not
fucking sucks.
Yeah, it's like we're beyond that, which means we're basically where we're at is like it's a lot of this just wiggling stuff around here and there, tweaking values and sort of thing. And that the feedback, basically the speed with which we can bang those out is so fast now compared to, in previous games. Especially because at that point, because Seth and I both will be available, Jen will be available, time-wise, it's also distributed. So like we can absorb the feedback from the beta actually really fast. And the same way we've done even our internal playthroughs, we'll make dozens of changes from a conversation, tweak, and then push those out. And then it's all there. So the feedback time is really fast. So the goal is basically around, I think around like March or something like that, to be able to kick out some keys because the game's so fucking big.
Keys for promo.
For press or YouTubers or whatever, to give them time and embargo, obviously.
Which will be broken immediately because that's always how it's gone down.
Yeah, that is part of that interesting like final bit of the game is because we're gonna have this beta test, which I think is the most dangerous thing that we have basically leading up to launch is the beta test, because it's going to be with a pool of players. So I'm sure Sampy will add links to like the announcement post and stuff. So there's a link in there to apply for the beta. Same idea as we did the alpha for anybody who applied for or participated in that. And that one is the scariest one to me because that's not going out to like, official press who are paid to do a job and they understand embargoes and all that kind of stuff, right? It's going out to just a bunch of players. And we have to hope that when we say, for the love of God, don't you dare post anything publicly about this whole thing. So that's the part that freaks me out the most about what's left is that bit. Because, of course, as soon as that happens, then our embargoes are meaningless and then it's a kind of a
you get into leak city, basically. So there's always this push and pull where everybody on like the press and YouTuber influencer side wants it as early as they could possibly get their hands on it if it's a big game, right? Because if they end up liking it, let's say, and they spend, 100 fucking hours in it, that's a lot of time, right? And so if you're going to write a review about it, make videos, whatever, there's a lot of downstream stuff that happens after you finish that investment of time. So they always want it as early as possible. We want to give it to them as late as possible. Not for like the Bethesda reasons, which is like, oh, this is actually broke as fuck and we don't want people to know. But for very different reasons, which is just that it's so hard. Yeah, it's so hard to make sure that everything happens on time. People this happened with the original Crashlands. The big problem we had was like, do we send the keys out to YouTubers and stuff, and then someone just didn't read. It was in giant letters.
I think the embargo was like it was on their machine. It was below the fold, and they didn't scroll down one line or something, and they were like, "I guess there's no embargo." Archive email,
grab the key, go, and then 100,000 views. Which again, you're like, great, but also fuck, because then we're getting yelled at by people. So I think
actually, as a player, this is also interesting, right? Because as a player, you would be thinking like, who cares? Isn't it actually fine if everyone's talking about it? And the reason is because everybody who talks about games in a way that like can impact their sales, they do that as a job, right?
Yes.
And so they're all at the whims of however they get paid, and how they get paid is always based on attention in some way, shape, or form. And so
it's a prisoner's dilemma.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if basically if somebody is first, then they get to capture most of the attention, right? So everybody needs to be first, and they'll almost only cover you if they can guarantee that either they're first or at least nobody else is first, right?
Yes.
And it's the same idea of exclusives like on like consoles and stuff, right?
Yeah, it's all the same.
And so the risk that we have is that if this stuff leaks ahead of time, then the people who would have covered it are like, well, we can't make any money if we cover this, so we're not going to bother.
Yeah. And especially if somebody breaks the embargo immediately, right? Because then the other people may not even have got a chance to put any time into the game yet, and like, well, then I'm not going to even bother, right? Yep. Like if they've already played it for a week, and they've got some time into it, they could put together an article, and then somebody breaks an embargo. And it's like, well, I mean, I know enough about the game that I can slap together an article. That's okay, right?
Right.
But they're not going to then put like 30 hours into the game after an embargo break.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, so that's always the final concern, and that is one that kind of, oh man, it'll get your anxiety whipped up in a hurry if you're not careful. But I mean, the thing is, like, we already did this in October of last year. We already did a closed alpha.
This is why we don't do public tests. Or
it's also why the number is actually very small.
Yeah.
It was 40 people.
We did 40 for the alpha. We haven't decided on the number for the beta, but it'll probably be a little more, but like up to 100 maybe, kind of at max.
Yeah.
But
because it's like the smaller the group, the better. Just like that trust feeling. It's almost not even about reality. It's just like,
we're going to be looking for like people like with a diversity of devices so that they can do cloud saving and like test out the mobile controls and all that stuff, which I still want to spend some time refactoring a bunch of stuff on those, which there's just a million things, leading up to the launch. But so I mean, it's going to be a crazy 3 months. It's coming.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, whatever happens between now and then, it's just going to come out on April 10th, no matter what.
Yep.
And that's
in some shape or form. Yeah. So the things for you to do as a person who hopefully is into our stuff between now and then is, like we said earlier, wish list, pre-order, pre-register, whatever. The game on all the platforms you can. Because again, that helps us out a lot. So do that. Sign up for the beta if you're interested in participating in that. The game is going to be.
So how do people sign up for the beta?
So there'll be hopefully there's just a form link in this episode, but also in our announcement post and kind of anywhere we're doing the announcements.
So kind of just like look places. Just look places.
It'll be in our Discord. It'll be in lots of places. I don't want to just say a link because links are insane, and especially like Google form links. So
just read it out. We got 30 minutes.
Sign up, and then you can participate in that. And that's really the main thing. Otherwise, we're just kind of hanging out. We'll continue putting out some posts here and there with some thoughts about what's going on, some updates about what's going on. We'll continue talking about the podcast. But mostly it's just sign up for that beta and go do your pre-orders.
We are now in the final leg of the race.
We're in the end game now, boys.
Yep. You can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm hurtling myself toward it at as fast a speed as possible.
I got to say, I'm looking forward to and dreading the post-launch.
Yeah.
I'm not dreading it because I think it's going to, because like I feel like we've gotten things figured out in the sense that I don't think it's going to be a bug fest. I don't think it's going to be staying up all night trying to figure out how to fix all kinds of broken shit like we've had with the original Crashlands. I think we're past that now. Now it's more of like the blank canvas, of like, okay, what's next? Like, what do we do next?
It's unfortunate. Because, it's also informed by what the hell happens.
So we can't like pre-decide. And like working on the same thing for 4 years, it's like, you wake up every day knowing what you're working toward. You've got, and especially like at this point in development, like we know what the problems are. And it's really weird because every now and then, like I go back through some of the game code and I'll see something and be like, oh yeah, that was really fucking hard to figure out, Just there's like so many little things all over the place. So we've talked about stuff like how to put roofs on buildings and how do quests work and how do we translate shit. Like it's just been 4 years of solving millions and millions of little problems. Yep. And then it's done. And then what?
Yeah, it's all sort of there's a big question of like, and then what, right? But at the same time, all of the stuff that we already have to deal with like continues to apply. So I was talking to our PR team about getting ready for our announcement day and stuff, and they were already like, by the way, in June there are a bunch of events. They've already posted their registrations, so that if we want to get Crashlands 2 in those events, then we probably want to be able to send stuff off the next few weeks. But we would need to know, are we pitching like some new content or some new trailer? Because like it's so fucking annoying. You can't just be like, hey, here's our dope game, please like show it. You have to be like, also here's your exclusive take and new content.
Yeah, before anybody's even touched the game, they're like, do you have any updates coming? You got some new content? Like,
Yep.
Oh my God. Just give me a minute.
Yeah, so we already have to start thinking about that. And we already have players. Players have been asking us the whole time about DLCs for Crashlands 2, which I find so funny because I'm like, the game isn't out. It's not.
You don't even know if you like it yet. I mean, I appreciate
you don't even
the
know
trust,
if you like it.
Yeah.
But also, it's so. I find it so interesting how we think about games so differently from other things. Like the game itself needs to change all the time. for it to be worth engaging with. Whereas like if you like read a book, you know, like emailing the author like, hey, you're gonna insert some new chapters into this bad boy, like. You gotta, you know, like it's a complete package and it's done.
I think that's what's so cool about it, though, right? It's like you get to.
It's a dynamic medium.
If it goes really well, you get to re-engage with the same, like with the thing you love in like just with other dimensions attached, or like actually, because I usually don't buy DLC, but there's been a few games in the last couple of years. It's like Dredge, for example. For whatever reason, I just love Dredge. So the DLC came out. I saw the reviews were like pretty good, not great, but like pretty good. Bought it, played it for like 5 hours. I was like, that was great. It costs like as much as the base fucking game, right? It's like another $15 or something for another couple hours in that experience. But I was just like, yeah, I want it. I love it. I just want more. You know, it's like season 2.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm probably thinking about this from the perspective of like, for a DLC to be worth it, the base game has to sell a lot of copies,
because
right? Because DLC, it's an attachment, right? So it's like you can never sell more DLC than you sold of the original.
Yeah.
And so it's always going to be a subset.
You can sell more DLC of anything new you would make, depending on how big your success is, right? So like Terraria or whatever else. If you're able to sell a DLC for that bad boy versus trying to make a whole other game, I mean,
yeah. Well, then it really comes down to like time versus money, right? Because like if it takes like in Crashlands 2's case, over 4 years to make the base game. Right.
Yeah.
And then if it's like 6 months to make a DLC and then you can sell the DLC for half the price of the game, then it might end up being like a really good
users or whatever.
Yeah. It might end up being a really good bang for your buck. But you know, it also means like something that we kind of found when we way back when we did Quadrupus Rampage, which was the last like free to play in-app purchase thing we did. Or no, I guess we did that with Flop Rocket and Roid Rage, but those were we just slapped together. But since Quadrupus was like, it was the second game we had made. It was the only game we had that made any kind of money. And it became this like obsession to just like keep working on it and just try to figure out how to get more money out of it, which sucked, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that I kind of
walk away from something that is working to go back into that. It's basically trying to say, is this a local maxima or like a total maxima? Like, are we at a place where this is like really, really good and like maybe the best you could do? Or is there a hill over here that we can jump to, you know, that requires now building out new stuff? But I think, I don't know, it is true that it's always instantly the next question. And actually, you know, Carl brought this up yesterday after when we were talking about his playthrough. He was like, I know it's a silly thing to ask, but he's like, I'll just say I'm very excited for whatever's next. Well, he's like, I want to ask because I know it's like when reporters ask, you know, people, you finished the Super Bowl, and they always ask like, so they're like, what's next? And everyone's like, could you just give me a?
Like, I spent my whole life trying to get to this moment. I don't know. So I don't know what's.
It's a funny thing, right? But it's like, I don't know. I'm excited to be in that void space again because also, truthfully, I think for me, the figuring out how a thing works is the most fun part. Grinding out 100 items in a 2 week span it's like interesting on certain levels, but also it just kind of makes me tired versus.
Oh yeah, starting a project is so much more fun than finishing it.
Yeah,
hands down.
Because you're like, what's it gonna be?
I actually had this funny moment. So I'm in the game maker and game developer subreddits and stuff, and this thing popped up where somebody was like, "Hey, I had some trouble with keyboards."
Oh god.
And they were like, yeah, like I'm French and I know like most of my players will play with like a QWERTY keyboard. Like, how do I? And they started asking some questions about which keys to use. And I started typing a response and then I was like, this will take me all fucking day. Like, and so I just did it
because to turn that exact problem into a blog post because it was so interesting and also took so much effort to sort out and deal with. And I'm like, I want to get this documented really thoroughly for ourselves for the future.
But the thing is, like, we solved it, and now I haven't thought about it since because it's an automatic solution, and I literally can't fucking remember how
I know. Yeah, there was something recently that came up too that I don't know what it was. It's something I ran into where I was like, oh yeah, no, there was so Stitch, which we talked about in the past, which is our tool for like making our games, stuff, right? But it's public, and so somebody had left get an issue and said, hey, this thing does this weird behavior where it like rewrites some default game maker stuff to make it work. And they were describing it and why it was a problem because of some recent changes the game maker made. And so I was reading through that and I was just trying to fucking remember, like, why? Why was I doing this? And because I couldn't remember enough to even figure out, like, does this need to be happening? Is this accomplishing something that has to happen? Can I change this behavior? And also, is this going to be a problem now that we'll also run into, right? Because I couldn't fucking remember what this is or what it's for. And so I was like reading, and I was like, oh, and I know, and I was already dreading. I was like, I know when I go try to figure it out, there's not going to be anything anywhere that like explains this. There's just going to be some code that does it. And I have to try to then work back through the fucking logic of why.
But the thing is like Stitch and like the pipelines and like all the keyboard problems, like, and so many of these things, there are things that we did that we needed to do as the project got bigger.
Yeah.
Right. And like at the start of a project, you're just fucking vibing.
Yeah.
Like nothing exists. And so you just like, just throw some fucking placeholder sprites in there. Let's just try this mechanic. That didn't work. I don't know. Right.
There's less integration because there's less stuff. There's less of an existing body to deal with. Right. Yeah.
Like we said, like all the problems are integration problems. Right. Mm-hmm. And I even saw like, there's a big debate. People always talk about like AI, LLMs in games and and like, how can you do it? Can you get like NPCs that the player can talk to, and some guy jumps in he's like, well, the thing is, it'll save you so much time as a developer because, for example, let's say you kill a character and it turns out that character is the mother of an NPC. As a developer, you didn't think about that scenario, and so you didn't program in any dialogue or reactions, for that NPC. Mm-hmm. And so when the player talks to the NPC, then the LLM will be able to generate a reaction for it. I was like, all right, let's drill into this.
Yeah.
Right?
How would the LLM quote unquote know?
How does it know that that's the mother of the NPC? How does the NPC know that happened? And what kinds of reactions can the NPC have
that matter to a player?
Because ultimately, if the NPC is like, I'm not talking to you anymore because you murdered my mother. What if that's an important story NPC? Is the game done now?
Because now you're saying like, I want to be able to. I don't want to have to account for these scenarios without realizing that also means you now can't account for the stuff you didn't account for, which definitionally puts you right back where you were, which is stuff happened you didn't account for, and now what?
And now shit feels broken. That's basically what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
so like, early dev, you can fuck around with stuff like that, but at a certain point, you have to integrate things into a broader game, it doesn't work.
I feel like they'll move, and I guess we usually do a scenario planning thing before a launch where we basically kind of bucket out, okay, here's the like
brackets of success, basically.
Yeah, here's the like we're fucked bracket. Here's the things that are just kind of the same as they have been. And then here's the like bigger than that bracket. And we do like basically an hour, 2 hours of kind of chatting. We're like, what are we doing in each scenario? Just so we have that kind of mental girding going into what is basically the moment that determines what happens for the next X number of years, which is essentially what this launch is.
You don't want to come into that being like, everything's going to go great, and then it doesn't, and you literally haven't thought about
exactly. It's mainly a negative. It's mainly a gird against like the negative problem, right? Which is it doesn't go as well as you thought. Do you have a plan?
Yeah, if things go insanely well, then
it just doesn't matter.
You don't have to do anything about that.
I do think kind of regardless of the scenarios, I think the mode, because you have to wait and see, right? There's no, you can see on launch day, like, okay, it went well, but some things like fizzle out real fast, right? Some things pick up speed. So
I think you get a pretty good idea. Actually, I think for almost all launches, the vast majority of sales in the launch year happen in the first month, basically, right?
Yeah, I think the first month. So I think that
so you need like a month to like review what happened, but you will know in all likelihood within the first couple days. Actually,
it's about a week,
if it's likely to be good, or you get a sense of if it's going to be bad. Very
correct.
Early.
Yes.
If it's not going badly, you don't get really a sense of how well it's going for at least a week, and then really it's that first month where you're like, okay, now we can start making some real projections about like, what does this look like?
So I think the move is basically in that month to do a combination of things, one of which is to enjoy it, believe it or not, because Jesus Christ, tremendous amount of work.
Watch people play it on Twitch.
Exactly.
Hang out on the Discord. Just playing it ourselves.
Yeah. The other is to document. So there's a bunch of stuff like on the art side, for example, that things are even on the we have this progression flow, right, of how the player moves through the game and how all the quests, the insights, the recipes, all this stuff is linked up. I've collected a bunch of heuristics about how to build that out that have been very, very useful, right, for as we hit the third biome, whatever else. I got a few more from all these tweaks we've been doing that would be really useful to just like take a moment, boil some of those down. And then you got stuff like this keyboard thing where it's like there's tech pieces that we've built that you want to take the time, not just for other people, but also for yourself to like package it up so you can revisit it later and know what in the fuck is going on.
No problem stays solved forever, no matter how. Because like the keyboard thing is one of those that felt like we're like, okay, like it really feels like we solved it forever. But there's just there's no way. There's no way that
the next
3 years from now, someone's going to come and be like, oh, fuck, how does this work? We're going to need to know how it works. And
or even just stuff like I want to say October of 2022, maybe? No.
That we switched
21 was in Game Maker was like, hey, we got this whole new set of features that changes everything about what you can do with your code.
Yep.
And then we're like, oh, fuck. In a good way. Because it was like stuff that we really, really have needed. But that meant learning a whole new way to program and also redoing tons of shit, right? And something that is coming, probably about smack halfway through the next game, is Game Maker has a completely new runtime. Mm-hmm. The runtime is like literally, it's like the engine.
It's the engine,
that runs the game, which means like the way that we would need to use that runtime and the constraints and features that it has will suddenly change.
Yeah. So I think basically like, there's a moment post launch where because you can't actually know what you could do yet, there's basically a week to a month of time where that becomes more clear. I think the move is basically a combination of enjoy it, reflect on stuff and log things, and then given what you know about shit that's coming down the pipe, just gather some intel. So on this game, when is this thing coming out? What are the changes likely to be? What are we going to need to be knowing about or prepping for, regardless of the state of this, and also regardless of whatever the next project is? And you kind of like let that fucking breathe for a moment, then all kind of
because it's also gearing us up for leveraging whatever happens with the launch too,
exactly.
Right? Because like with original Crashlands and with Levelhead, both we gave GDC talks. We did a bunch of events and where we would. That's mostly talks, right? But like basically try to increase our visibility in the broader industry. And you can only do that by leveraging a game most of the time. And that's true. Whether
it's weird. Nobody cares what you have to say if you haven't made a game in a decade.
But it's true whether it fails or succeeds because then the story can become, here's this game that really seemed like it shouldn't have failed and it did, right? Which is then another compelling story. But also that's where you take all of your, once the game is done, as you guys are saying, that's when you can reflect back and like take the cumulative knowledge that isn't still changing, right? And be like, here's what we learned. Here's why we did what we did. Here's the cool, weird shit we ran into to the best of our ability to remember. Because also, like you guys are saying, there is so much stuff that happened over the past few years.
So many years. Yeah.
So many lessons, ideas, concepts, design principles, reasons why the game is the way it is, reasons why our tools are the way they are, that are lost forever already. We'll never be able to recreate or remember them, right? But there's still a lot left, and we want to try to like capture that. That's the time to do it, and we can leverage that for our own future to make sure we know stuff and can train future staff, remind ourselves, and so on. But also we can bring that to the world and say, hey, like we want to share our knowledge of the stuff that we learned so other people don't have to do it, and also make people more aware of what we've been up to.
I think it's also the case when you're doing a project, like basically a whole game. So when you're not just doing like a piece of it. You're not, say, like art contracting or just sound or whatever else, because there's phases to it that have actually very different shapes, like the shape of pre-production, the shape of production, the shape of finishing, right? There's knowledge that's associated with each one of those phases about how to do it a little bit better or in a way, like basically things that tripped you up this time around. We were talking about like our entry into production with the Husk, for example, earlier in 2024 had a bunch of rocky starts because we actually hadn't worked together in that capacity before, and figuring out how exactly to, again, move to that point of answering the next question was always hard. Stuff about pre-production that was challenging for us. Like there's basically each one of those phases is actually its own kind of expertise. But the problem is you're never doing them always. You're moving between them. So you can lose the distance, the temporal distance between like pre-production and production is so big potentially on a project that you can just like kind of forget the shit that really tripped you up in a particular phase. And so I think having a moment to collect some of that phase-based knowledge about how to build this stuff, I think will be really, really helpful as we head into.
Yeah, well, it's basically trying to generate models of like, why do we think?
Yes.
What do we think we did that worked? What do we think we did that didn't work? And these are ultimately best guesses because, like you're saying, the full context matters enormously. And we're looking at survivorship bias and recency bias, and we're trying to like figure out when you're just asking the question, "What happened?" Right? You're already just wrong, all the way through because you can't recreate the whole thing. So try it, but always the earliest you could do it, the better, because that's going to give you your most accurate interpretation of, or your most accurate recollection of what happened, and then therefore your most accurate interpretation of what happened. So you can take lessons away from that. So yeah, I agree completely. That's the move post launch is to say, okay, handle post launch stuff, right? Because there's going to be a lot of it, and then just take time to reflect, document, publish details about how it all happened.
And enjoy it.
Yep.
Because, man, it only happens once every fucking half a decade. You better enjoy it for at least a couple
but
days.
also so much of what we've worked on in terms of like how we do things is to try to make it so that we can.
That's true. It is.
You know?
Yeah. Post-launch, you're not on fire. You know, that's
if this launch goes as smoothly as Levelhead's did, then we're sitting pretty. And Levelhead was a much more complicated launch scenario than this one. And but
it was a simpler game.
It was a simpler game
in a weird way. Like it had some really complicated stuff, but I think it's more that like in Levelhead, it was like it was combinatorially complex, but flat when it comes to the time required to experience that complexity, right? So like if you wanted to try out a weird combination of shit in Levelhead and like building a level, you could just do it like that, right? And see it, and you're like, oh, that doesn't work, right? But in Crashlands 2, it'll be like, oh yeah, if I do like 40 hours into the game, if I do this quest first and then this quest and this third quest, then I come in this town from the back, then
it's weird.
The quest doesn't trigger, right? And it's like, well, how the fuck?
It's harder to predict the consequences of change in Crashlands 2.
Yeah.
Which is going to make bug management, because I mean, anything where there's a change and we don't think through all the ways to test it exposes some possibility that something goes awry. And being able to predict all the ways that things could go awry is just really hard, right? And as we're leading up to launch, we're going to have this huge round. So like Sam said, we can now deploy a fuckload of changes really fast through our game changer tool set, right? Which is great. That means we can rapidly adapt to issues. But then the bottleneck becomes, how well can we describe those changes, understand how they need to be tested, and then test them completely to find out if nothing bad has happened. And as we lead up to the launch, we're going to have that moment through the beta test of identifying and deploying probably a fuckload of changes, like a huge swath of all small, like very small, right? But a huge number of small changes. And yeah, having high confidence with that between then and launch, we'll have fully worked out every single possible imaginable kink in those changes is going to be.
Well, and we'll need to do stuff like probably put together some tools that allow us to grab players' cloud saves, right? And like load it up ourselves and then test the change that we're making to fix something that they experienced. And then in some cases, potentially even
put that back up
change that save and put it back in, like put it back onto their account. It's like we don't have those tools yet, and those are things that we're going to need to slap together, as we approach launch.
That's true. Yeah, we haven't yet set to figure out like
you could do that after a little bit.
Yeah, but to figure out like what is our post-launch toolkit for dealing with feedback, fixing stuff, and all that is something we'll have to be like working out as we get there. But a lot of that will come probably with a mad scramble in like the first couple weeks post-launch. Is like
probably during the beta, really, because like if we have people in the beta test who like get stuck on something, we want them to be able to keep going.
Yeah, that's true.
Right,
yeah,
and so we'll need to be able to like we'll kind of like it'll be like that, Wallace and Gromit like building the tracks while you're
I do have
we'll
some
be doing
ideas,
that during the beta
already with that, given that we've been working on deep links for Crashlands 2 to do dev stuff, because that means we can have a link to a player's level you could click, and now you
just jump right
because there's a two-part. One is like,
that.
How do I get a hold of it is part of the problem, right? And then the other one is, once I've got a hold of it, what do I do next, right? But the harder part is the getting a hold of it, actually, and this might be a nice little slick external kind of a solve that simplifies things. So
Exactly. With Levelhead, it was like, oh yeah, you can see this bug by just loading this level.
Yeah,
which is published
because it's part of the same
Crashlands-
system, right? Like all of it's already how it.
Yeah,
how
and in
it works.
Crashlands 2, it'll be like because somebody has a very specific combination of like quests done, which items they have, all this stuff that they won't know exactly what it is that they've done that led to this situation, because a lot of that stuff is just data, right? It's just behind the scenes. And so we'll need to be able to like load that up and analyze things. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff to do. But yeah, we're super stoked. The game's coming together in a way that I'm very pumped about. So again, launch will be April 10th. Check out the trailer, go wishlist, do all that stuff. And that's all the time we have for this week. We'd like to thank our producers, Fat Bard and Sampa DaCosta, for putting the podcast together. And thanks to our community moderators who keep our Discord running. To get more involved in the Butterscotch community, just go to podcast.bscotch.net, where we have links to the Discord, a way for you to donate, and links to the podcast archives. And of course, like I just said, wishlist everything.
Yep.
Do everything, sign up, subscribe, pre-register, whatever. We're super excited for everybody to see the game, and I hope to hear from everybody soon on what you think so far. So thank you all for listening. We'll see you next week.
Bye.